Hey, Wando, hey, ho, hey, Wando, hey. I want to welcome everyone back to the show, Real Natives. We are archiving our story, telling our story. And go ahead and introduce yourself, brother, and we'll get started.
My name is Wolf Warpath. Um, my tribe is Jicarilla Apache, Picudi Pueblo, Mixtec, Mexica, and Yaqui. And my people are the Buenos and the Garcias of Napa County.
Okay, yeah, the Buenos are a large family. We hear a lot about them. Ben, is real into the I guess you would say the recovery process of healing and stuff like that. So, what was it like growing up native in Napa County, the wealthiest, if not one of the wealthiest counties in Northern California? What was it like growing up here, being native? Oh,
Well, when I grew up, when I was young, I got taken away pretty early. So I wasn't really raised with my family. Uh, I was given into the foster care system, and I grew up mostly in that. Like my most of my life, I spent growing up in foster care group homes, and I wasn't even really aware of my identity as a Native person. I thought I was white, or I thought I was Mexican. I wasn't really sure as who who I really was. And so growing up like that, I grew up in my grade school days. I grew up in Angwin, California, as a Seventh Day Adventist, and I wasn't granted the opportunity to really understand any of the any native culture, any native ways or traditions at all. And it was immediately put back into foster care because my behavior became weird, and like I was too much for her. She was an older lady when she adopted me, and being a young man, it was difficult for her to, you know, to deal with that. So um, I started kind of going down this path. She took me on some things. She took me out of country to battle zones for missionary work because she's a Christian like that. Um, but um, Eventually, I got to the point where, as a teenager, I got really deep inside of myself to the point where I didn't really know who I was, and I wasn't really made aware until like maybe my mid-teens that I was Native at all. And my social worker is the one who kind of broke it to me and saw that I was so lost. Like I was doing a lot of things like self-harm, running away, things like that, that, kind of caused um, her to be concerned about my well-being and like my mental health and all that. So um, she kind of made me aware and took me in front of some elders somewhere in the East Bay somewhere. I don't know exactly who they were. One I ended up meeting later on, and started taking me to powwows. They gave me these feathers and sage and cedar. I didn't know what to do with any of that. I would just smoke it like a cigarette. That's what I thought I was supposed to do. Uh, so I mean, like I said, like a lot of my identity was kind of lost. I didn't really know who I was. It's really confusing, to be honest with you. I thought maybe that's what all teenagers go through because you expect uh that teenage, growing up, you just don't know who you are. The regular kind of stuff. Um, it got to the point where I was institutionalized so badly in group homes and foster care that when I became an adult, I didn't really understand how to live, and I lived in the street. I kicked it with gutter punks and the skinheads in the streets, listening to punk rock and drinking alcohol and um, getting high. I still wasn't really found who I was. I ended up meeting my biological family, uh, which was interesting. Not growing up with them, it's kind of an interesting thing when you kind of meet people that know who you were when you were a baby. Uh, and they know who you are and stuff, and they have memories of you, but you don't remember who they are. and I became even more aware. You know, my grandma had a lot of like native things around the house that she things I would call terracunda stuff now, which is kind of like the cheesy wolf stuff with the lightning and stuff. Um, and she's pretty much the primary, you know, like the Hickory Apache side. She's my mother's side has been the side that I've been closest on. But you know, I wasn't really made made aware of it too much until I got into enough trouble where I was incarcerated in prison. And I remember I knew my family, but I was never really close with them because I had never really fully embraced, you know, who I was as a person. I thought who I was creating, like this punk rock image and like this death metal and all this other stuff about me. I thought that that's who I was, and I never really realized that I was even more lost because you know I was just getting high and um, you know, and I was using heroin and I was using meth. I was using all these different types of drugs to suppress something. And I remember seeing my uncle Tony, who is a big influence on why I really chose to start focusing more on the culture part of it. I remember him telling me when I was in jail, he's like, when you get to prison, you tell every person you meet that you're Indian. You know, um, that's back when we could say Indian, I guess. uh, and so that's what I did, and I met the bros, and that's where I began to really learn like the Red Road. You know, uh, and I still wasn't quite even sure, you know, where I fit in and all of that. You know, because you know a lot of it's kind of cookie cut. You know, the way the lodge as it is, and the way traditions are taught. You know, I'm an out of state Indian, so there's no California resources for me to really learn about, you know, the Jicarilla Apache way or the Piquiti Pueblo way or any of that stuff. So, but the bros in prison are the ones that kind of, you know, took me under their wing, and they put me through quite a bit of hazing. I don't know who else might be like listening or watching this and knowing what it's like, you know, to be a bro when you first get in there. But you know, you get kind of bullied a little bit, and they give you a hard time. You know, they want you to earn your feathers, as they say. But I began to embrace it, and I kind of felt right for me. I remember long ago when my social worker was trying to show me it. I remember her taking me to a powwow, and I remember hearing those drums, and I remember getting emotional, and I remember crying. Something about those drums that kind of made me feel something. It's hard for me to explain. And ever since then, I feel like the music, singing, drums, those are kind of been the strongest things for me. The things that have really kind of refined themselves a little bit more in me than most things. You know, sweat I still have a hard time with. You know, I suffer a great deal in there and go through all my things. But so you know, that's kind of where a lot of the Red Road started for me. Was in prison, and I just learned the you know Archie Fire Lame Deer stuff. Um, the Lakota way, you know, sweating, you know, the Star Lodge, and I learned all that stuff, and I still have a lot more even to learn. Um, and just coming back in and out, you know, I feel like I forget it. And it's a lot like how it seems to me like a lot of it's been similar uh, in my younger age. It seemed like when people go to prison, they become suddenly they're Christians or suddenly they're a Muslim, and then they get out, and then they're just kind of go back to the way they used to be, and they forget all about it. And that's kind of what I was doing a little bit. And then uh, as I got a little older, I met Charlie Toledo from the Susquehanna Intertribal Council, and um, she kind of took up the mantle because my family used to be a part of that, and we had the lodge here. Um, and some things happened where we had to burn the lodge, and we couldn't put one back up where we had it. And she kind of took me in, and I was able to help out and do that. Uh,
I really do appreciate your honesty, brother, for sharing some information about your life and letting people know. So, how old were you when you first went into prison, and what was it like? for those that may not be aware, you got those youngsters, kind of school them of what it was like for you at your young age, going in there, the unknown. Just share a little bit about that. So,
Um, I remember when I first went to prison, it was like it was a shock. I didn't understand. I was so used to the mental health system of group homes. They treat you differently, so you're used to getting away with a little bit more. And then when I got into the justice system, various things like threatening people or pulling a knife on somebody or things like that. My first prison term I went was a 245, which is assault with a deadly weapon. With something like GBI, something like great bodily injury or something like that. And it was because I was drunk and pistol whipped somebody with a BB gun. And so I remember that experience. And then they just got kind of tired of my shit. And they're like, all right, we're sending you to prison. You're not listening to anything I say. You're going to prison. So I remember the bus ride there pretty well, actually. And I remember I was afraid. I remember feeling sick. I wanted to throw up because I was on a little tiny bus, a little cramped bus. I'd never been there before in my life.
how old were
And
you?
oh, sorry. I was 19 years old. Yeah. So I had about an 18-year, our little 1 year little span of Napa County going, man, like straighten out your life. If we're sending you to prison and me just not listening, that's on me. That's my choice. But so I was 19 years old. I was just a young kid. Um, I felt like I kind of felt like I felt I felt fear, because you hear so much about prison. You hear so much, in movies and TV. It gives an idea of what it's like, and you kind of it's a scary situation. So I remember riding that bus and feeling real sick, like I wanted to throw up. And then I remember pulling into the entry area of this gates of San Quentin and seeing these big, tall walls and thinking, oh man, like this is for real, like this is like a castle, It was the most intimidating thing I can remember in my life. I feel, it was pretty scary. And then I remember coming up to the R&R, and uh, we have this little fenced area where these guys were kind of waiting,
For
and we
those,
got the main.
I apologize. For those that don't know R&R, can you tell them a little bit about that?
So R&R in prison is receiving and release. So it's where they process inmates coming in and where they process inmates going home. So before you actually like leave the prison, they do your fingerprints and check you out. And when you get in there, they do the same thing. So I remember it's like this big. It used to be this big brick building. Now it's like this weird hospital thing. It looks much different than it did before, and the system is a lot more different than it was before too, um, because they just rebuilt the whole area. And now everybody stays in cells. Normally, there's this little outside area that you can go, a gated area once you're done with a certain phase of the process. And bros or people can like will throw tobacco to you so you can smoke a cigarette or whatever. But that was a while ago. That was 2002. That's when I went in. And so I have a T number, which is a pretty old number. I had a T number. I discharged now. But I remember the first thing I do, you walk up and you're on the yard already, and all these guys are looking at you. I remember feeling like, oh man, everyone's looking at me. And there's a cop right in front of me, and he asks you, what race are you? And first thing I said was I'm Indian. And and I remember my uncle Tony telling me like, everywhere you go, where the bros at, where are the Indians at? Always ask where the bros are. Where are the Indians? And uh, so right when we ended up little bullpen, um, waiting like pretty much all day long, get served the prison clothes and all that stuff and get processed, do the medical check, all that stuff. Sit in the bullpen, just figuring out who the Indians are. You ask around, hey, who the Indians or who the natives here? And you meet somebody and that's who you are. That's who you're with from then on until you go up to you're done with everything. You're ready to be housed. So everybody has their own different housing designations wherever they're going to go. And some of them so do you want me to describe to you the prison, or because I'm pretty well versed with it?
Yeah. Share with the audience for those youngsters that are out there think they know it all with county time. School them a little bit.
So when you get done doing all that stuff, usually it's nighttime. Even though you get there early in the morning, you're there pretty much all day long because when you're in there, you're on CDC time. That's their time. They're gonna take their time doing what they got to do, processing you as slow or fast as they want. And so we're talking about a little tiny cell, maybe um, a little, maybe a couple sizes bigger than a bathroom with a bathtub. You're in there locked in there with two benches, maybe in a toilet with like 20, 30 guys in a dog cage kind of scenario. And you're in there pretty much all day until they finally issue your clothes and then you're ready for house you, right? So everybody, we roll up all of our stuff into sheets and, we carry them over like a kind of like you tie it one end, and you put it over your shoulder, and you carry everything you got right there, everything you brought from county, books or whatever you got. I think the worst part is any street clothes you have or things that you matter to you. I remember I had a punk jacket like with all these spikes and pinks and stuff all over it. I was really proud of, and if you couldn't afford to send it home, the cop would just kind of throw it right there in the garbage. Let's go into the garbage. You just got to watch it go away. So one of the worst experiences about going back to prison is losing things that you really enjoyed or had. But so after that, you walk up this kind of hill, and there's a couple sections, and there's the gym, which usually they were using for violators. So it's this large dorm with maybe 100 to 200 bunks in it, and that's usually violators back then were people who would get anywhere between no days to a year flat, and they were already on parole and they got into trouble already, so they were just in trouble in a different way. So it's kind of like a probation violation or something. And then the primary reception area is called West Block. So West Block it's a large, long building. It's got 5 tiers, and every side, I want to say, I think they have 100 cells for each tier on two sides. There was a designation where there was Bayside and then there was Yard side. Yard side was the side that was closest to the yard of West Block, and that was all the northern Hispanics would go there, and that's where they would be, and they couldn't. There was no crossing that area. They would kind of compartmentalize them, and on Bayside, that's where the Southsiders were at for a long time, until they moved them all to Badger section. So Badger section, there's a bunch of different buildings and blocks that have different purposes. Alpine was the workers' little block where a lot of the kitchen workers would be. I believe that's S&Y, which is special needs now. And Donner was more like the mental health kind of people. And then Badger was those were like a lot of lifers where they get processed there, level 4. And then there was a Carson, which was the whole. And they had their own individual yards for that block there. Every once in a while, we go down to the main yard and we can interact with some of the other people. We go to sweat too, because we could sweat, as natives. But I remember coming up on West Block, and the first thing you do on the tier you're on, yeah, where are the Indians at? Where are the natives at? I don't know. I don't want to be offensive by using the word Indians, but I'm used to it. So I was like, hey, where are the Indians at? So they direct you to the first person. First thing you do before you even unwrap anything is you give your paperwork. You show them this is the charges that I'm here on, and if you got a bro as a cellie, then it's a lot easier. But then they would kind of sell you up with whoever they can fit you in, because AMI, the race AMI in prison, is kind of a neutral race. We prefer to be sold with each other, but if a lot of times you get sold up with the buddies or the Pinoys or Samoan, an Asian is usually the kind of go-to. And but the first thing you do is you present your paperwork before you even unwrap anything, so then you're good to go. And what I mean by good to go is you don't got child molesting, you don't have any like rape charges, really bad charges that it's just bad, period. You can't be there. You can't do any of that stuff. A lot of the, other than, them being terrible charges, Archie Fire Lame Deer for the system in prison state, the rule was people who have hurt, women and children and elders can't access or use um, the sweat lodge. They can't do that because those are all things like the elders are our past, and they're the ones that give us what we know, and the children are our future, and those are the ones that we share our culture with, and the women are the providers. They bring new people into the world. That's what keeps our culture going. That's what keeps us going. So Archie Fire Lame Deer laid that out in the what are they called? By what are they called? Something. I can't remember what they're called, but that's what that's about. Other than, nobody wants to be around someone like that. So I remember getting there and getting in this little cell. The cell is like, you could do this. This is a cell. It's one arm's length wide, and then you could do this. And you could touch both sides of the cell. And you put two arms out like this, and that's how deep the cell is. And you put your one arm up standing, and then it's like an arm and then like another half. That's high. And they put two guys in there. It doesn't matter how big it is. And I remember I think my first cellie was this dude named Big Al Martinez, and he's this big pomo dude. And so that was kind of a difficult thing to kind of get. And I was kind of big too because I was in jail. And I had long gut. So after using some drugs for so long, you get kind of fat. I'm fat now because I'm old, but so I remember getting in there and meeting this guy and didn't know what to do, and it was an interesting thing. But the bros kind of took care of me because I was new. They look out for you, but they also give you a lot of shit. They let you know, you're new, so you've never been here before, so we're gonna give you shit. So there were a lot of teasing and stuff like that, and I remember just really not at the end of the night, kind of just feeling exhausted, man. There's cigarette smoke on upper tiers. You get a lot of cigarette smoke up there, whether you smoke or not. And I remember going to bed that night, sleeping that night, in this like rusty little spring thing with this mattress that looked like a diaper kind of. And it was a unique thing. And then I remember hearing my first time in my ever life, you hear the shutdown. So every night at 10:30 on these different individual blocks, you hear, like West Block, it is now 10:30. We ask for your participation and cooperation in shutting tonight's program down. And they have this whole thing where this one person, whoever it is, yells this and acknowledges all the different races. And they always end up good night, God bless, Shalegwa. And that just kind of means, that's it. The program's shut down. It means no more talking after a certain hour. Out of respect for everybody, everybody's just quiet, no yelling, down the tier. And I remember hearing that and going, wow, like what have I gotten myself into,
So you was 19 years old, and after you went to San Quentin, where did they ship you to? And what's the difference between San Quentin and the other prison that you sent you to?
All right, so San Quentin was you're in your cell 23 hours a day. You leave, you walk the chow, and you walk back, and then every other day you get a shower, and every other day or every 2 days you get yard, depending on something's happening or not. There's a lot of program cancellations because something's happened. Somebody got killed or somebody got hurt or there's a heart attack or there's a football game the COs want to watch or there's a holiday or whatever. And so after during that process, you wait there. Normally, it was about 90 days, and you kind of see classification, and they figure out the level of prison they're going to send you to. They have this whole complex formula that they use depending on your age, how many times you've been to prison, what term you got sentenced to, and all those different things have like an effect on a classification formula where that has your effect on where you end up going. And so I ended up going to a level 2 prison for my first term, It was 2.5. It was 2 years with half, and I went to a prison called Solano. So in um in reception, that's what San Quentin is or was. Um, you wear orange, and you're more restricted, and you're restricted because they don't really know where you're at. They don't really know where um what kind of prisoner you're going to be, if that makes any sense. And essentially, you wear all orange, and you're more restricted until they can figure out what level of prison to send you to. And when they figure all that out, it takes about normally 90 days normally, and then they ship you out. So you get on a bus super early in the morning, and they ride you to the next prison. I ended up going to Solano, which is it's over here, not too far from home actually. Solano State Prison is right next to another prison called California Medical Facility. That's Vacaville, and I ended up going to I think it's called C Yard now, but it was called 3 Yard when I went there. And it's a much different situation. You don't get as much privileges, or you get more privileges on a it's called a mainline yard. So there's reception yards where they're kind of classifying you. That's their priority, and then there's mainline yards where you get more privileges. You're more open to doing programs. You can get packages, and then your clothes change from orange to blue. So and now was shoot, we get these little green web belts, and they had these little fake jeans and these little boots that you can get with these leather bottoms. They're really nice boots actually, and then button up blue shirts. And I remember getting issued that and feeling like, wow, this is prison. It's a whole different situation. And you go through another reception R&R at that other prison, so they receive you and they do medical and all that stuff, and then they send you to the yard that you're going to. And so I went to Solano, and I was able to the lodge was right there in the yard. And the first thing you do, like I said, you go, and first thing you ask is, where are all the Indians? Who's Indian around here? And you go introduce yourself, and then you um, do your paperwork, just to be, just to double check, out of respect and stuff. And sometimes the bro will be like, show you his, so it's not like a one-way situation. Um, and then I remember, you get a bunk. My bunk was on upper tier, the top of these stairs, and it was like on what's called Front Street. What that means is basically everybody from the day room could see you, because it was a dorm situation. So it's a 270 building, which usually has cells that line the back part of it. But those cells were all kind of hollowed out into these dorms, like 10-man dorms or so, and they were just packed full of people. And it was a whole different environment because people had curtains hanging and TVs, and it was a whole different situation. There was a lot more privileges and more freedom. And so I remember meeting the first kind of bros I met on that yard. I remember meeting a bro named Ray and a bro named Blanket, and those are like the bros that kind of took me in under their wing in the building, because I didn't really know what I was doing. So, and it turned out, as I was saying earlier, this council of like elders and people, natives, from when I was a kid, Blanket was there and remembers me. He's like, I remember you. I remember when your social worker brought you up to talk, so we can try to help you find a circle to join or something. And so that's where I landed. I ended up in Solano, in a level 2 facility there. That's where I ended up.
So you had mentioned the first time you went in was 2002, and when was the last time you went in?
The last time I went in was 2015. So, and I was in there for a long time, and I was in there for because I'd done in like intermediate terms, like a 2 with half, and then a 4 with half. So I was getting all these halftime, getting these really small terms. And this term, all those terms and their enhancements that like come with them, they just boom, they just dumped on me this time. And it was a situation I shouldn't have put myself in, you know, regardless of any, there was no malice on my behalf, but you know, I was there and I could have just left instead of stuck around. But they ended up clucking me down like 13 years, 4 months. And I ended up doing 8 years on that. It was hard for me to believe uh, getting that much time, but I ended up doing from 2015. I got out in 2022.
All right, all right. So that segues into my next question. I do appreciate your honesty. Is there someone that you want to say thank you to that helped you out in life to get out of that situation, or someone just you want to say thank you to, you considered a hero or a legend that helped you get out of that?
It's really hard to really kind of pinpoint. You know, I think what I needed to do was open up a part of myself because I was stuck in survival mode for such a long time. I needed to open myself up more to um, something other than, you know, thinking on a survival mode. And I did a lot of reading of books. You know, I read the journals, like the prison writings of Leonard Peltier. You know, there's a lot of things I took away from that, like being in the lodge in prison. It's like ripping them off. And then Black Elk and Don Miguel Ruiz, he wrote the Four Agreements. He opened up, you know, love, which was really hard for me to really understand because growing up in foster care, you know, you don't really feel that, you know. So I guess I'd say those three guys, you know, and also John Funmaker, big John Funmaker, old John Funmaker. I met him at a prison, and he used to sweat down there. He used to run the sweat down there, and he uh, he said some things to me that kind of stuck. He gave me this little rock that to put in my medicine bag, and said that this little rock kind of represents you in your heart, and you can rub it all day long, but it's always gonna stay the rock. It's not gonna just rub off real quickly. And you got to remember that you you can you can endure through most. You know, this rock has been in the river. You know, so I guess I could say those guys, those people.
Oh, I got a couple more questions before we wrap it up. Um, any words of wisdom that you want to say to the next generation that might be the younger native boys that are young men that are running down the wrong path? Any words of advice to them?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Um, I think what's important is to remember that all natives have is given through memory and experience from elders, and we have to keep our culture. It comes before all this urban stuff, all the gangs, any of the drugs. Our culture is more important than anything. That's that's first and foremost because our traditions are oral traditions. There's no books, and it's important that the young people learn as much as they can and focus more on that than some like rapper lifestyle or getting into a gang or just getting distracted. That's important. And second thing is if you worry about your reputation, because your reputation is who other people think you are, and but your personality and your character, that's your soul, that's who you are, that's who you are. And as you worry more about your reputation, then you'll lose everything in terms of who you are, and you start becoming who other people want you to be instead of you being yourself. And don't let don't let what other people say define who you are. Don't let anything else define who you are, because we're native people. We're strong and we've endured a lot. You know, that's and we and you're just as strong. That's what I would say, I guess.
Thank you. The last question I have for you at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, Wolf, what do you want to be remembered for? What would you want to be remembered for? Oh,
Cool. I think I want to remember for, being able to get out of that, of being lost. But I think for the most part, I don't. I enjoy. My thing is I love to help. I love to serve. I love to help others. I like to. I want to be remembered as a person who helped. Whether it be kids, whether it be the elders, whether it be Suskel, whether it be anything. It doesn't make a difference what it is. If it's a good cause, I want to be somebody who's known for helping positive things, helping as a positive person who gives positive things to the community.
I do appreciate you taking time out of your day, sharing some stories. A few brothers were incarcerated too, but they just didn't feel comfortable with that side of sharing the information, which I do appreciate you coming on and being authentic and sharing the information that that may help somebody go into the straight and narrow path and make that change in their life. Because after all, this life goes by way too fucking fast, man. And
Yep.
it just goes by too fast, and we don't want to spend it in prison over something decision we made. Just like that, life could change, man. And it's sad that we got a lot of young brothers, natives, and sisters out there that are getting lost in society with identity. You know what I mean? And I do believe that we do have a high rate of recovery because of our traditional ways and because of our way of life. You know what I mean? It's important that we tap back into that if those who haven't yet. So, with that being said, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Like and subscribe. Go view your favorite native. And with that being said, I want to tell everyone just to be safe. Oh. Hey, hundo, hey, ho, hey, hundo, hey. Hey.